And then they grew and became a nation. Their entire history as a nation was slavery. That's it. They had slave mentality. They had really poor self-esteem. They were a pure nation of Jews because nobody would marry any of them because they were slaves. You marry up, you don't marry down. You didn't bring a Hebrew girl to dinner and say, Mom, I want you to meet, she's a slave. I know, well, you can't date her. She's a slave. So they were just a pure race of Jews, and they were slaves, and their entire history, thought processes, self-esteem was all about slavery. They had no law. They didn't need law. See, when you're a slave, you wake up every morning and you say, yes, master. And if you say no, master, you don't, that's the end. So it's always yes. You don't have to have a government. They didn't have a king. They didn't have rulers. They had some sort of society, a slave society, but they essentially adopted what they could of Egyptian culture, even though they hated the Egyptians, their taskmasters. All they knew was slavery. That was their whole history. And God had been very quiet. And for 400 years, don't go by that too quick, over, twice what we've been as a nation, 400 years. All they knew was slavery and oppression. 400 years. And then God brought them to this mountain, and he's about to give them their law. They didn't have any law. They didn't have any rule. They had no society. They had nothing. And God gives them the law. So God gets Moses up on the mountain, and here's what he says. This is amazing. You ready for this? Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. You can follow with me as I read. We'll put these up on the screen. Ready? This is incredible. So there's Moses again. Okay, Moses, get your chisel and your stone out. We're about to, that's not how it happened, but, God wrote it in stone. Here we go. And God spoke all these words. Here we go. This is the 10 Commandments. Very beginning of the 10 Commandments. Here we go. And God spoke all these words, and he said, verse 2, I am the Lord your God who, and Moses might have said, whoa, wait. Did you say the Lord your God? Yeah, I am the Lord your God. You mean I am the Lord the God? No. Moses, people, I am the Lord your God. Well, that's like kind of personal, like you're my God. You mean you're the God? No. I'm your God. But that kind of implies we got a relationship going. Exactly. Well, we haven't really done anything. I don't know if you've noticed, but we're just like slaves. We haven't done anything. In fact, we don't even know what we're supposed to do. That's why I'm here. You're going to tell us what we're supposed to do so we can be good people, and you haven't even given us any, and you're already saying we're your people? Yeah. You're in. You're mine. You belong to me. I am your personal God. Just like that. Well, not exactly just like that. You interrupted me. I am the Lord your God who, and then he takes him down memory lane. This is huge. Who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And all of a sudden, Moses has a little miniature flashback. Because you see, for 400 years, God had done nothing, and suddenly when they had given up hope and despaired, and they weren't even sure there was such thing as an Abraham and an Isaac and the God of Jacob. I mean, we haven't heard about that God in a long time. Maybe that was a myth. Maybe that was folklore. I mean, our God has done nothing for us lately. Suddenly, God shows up, and he sends Moses, and Moses comes into the midst of the people of Israel and begins to speak on behalf of God. I mean, where have you been, God? Moses begins to speak on behalf of God, and Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, God sent me. I know you think you're God, but the God sent me, and he says he wants you to let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, I don't think so. I mean, our whole economy is supported by slave labor, which would be your people. We can't let your people go. The economy would collapse. No, your people can't go. And so God hardened Pharaoh's heart, so he kept saying no. And then God took, this is amazing, God took each one of the Egyptians' gods and made a mockery of them. You like the Nile River? You think the Nile River is the source? You worship the Nile River? He turned the Nile River into blood. You like flies, you worship flies, you got flies. You worship frogs, you like frogs, you got frogs. You worship the sun, he blotted out the sun. God took every deity, every aspect of Egyptian culture, and one by one made a mockery of it. And the Israelites are standing on the sidelines going, what is going on? This is unbelievable. There's somebody speaking on our behalf. Somebody has come to our rescue. We don't even know his name or her name or its name. We know nothing about, but good grief, we have an advocate. We have somebody who's come along beside us. This is unbelievable. And finally, after the economy in Egypt was in shambles, Moses says, okay, Pharaoh, you going to let us go? And Pharaoh says, no, you can't go. Moses, okay, this is the last straw. And then God, for the first time, spoke to the nation of Israel. In fact, in this passage we're about to read, I want you to, if you're on chapter 20, I want you to go back to chapter 12 real quick. We're going to come back to chapter 20. Go to chapter 12, verse 1. We're going to read a few verses. This is amazing. Don't miss this. Especially if you're Jewish, don't miss this. This is incredible, incredible stuff. God, in this moment, issues his first command to the nation. Now, they've never even heard from God as a nation. They have never heard from God since they were a nation. And God issues his first command. It wasn't on Mount Sinai. It was while they were in Egypt. And listen to what he says to the people. Chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month is to be for you the first month. In other words, we're changing the calendar. You're going to have your own Jewish calendar. This is the first month, verse 3. Tell the community of Israel. Now he's starting to tell them what to tell the nation of Israel. This is the first time God has spoken to the nation of Israel. Tell them that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share it with one of their nearest neighbors, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. So they're going, okay, let me get this straight. God hadn't spoken in 400 years, and the first thing he says is you're going to have a meal? Yeah. This is what I want you to do. I want everybody to get a lamb or a goat. We'll see in a minute. And I get a lamb, and I want you to have a meal with a lamb. And if you have too few people for a whole lamb, invite some other friends over. The animals you choose, verse 5, must be year-old males without defect. And you may take them from the sheep or the goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the people of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. So everybody's going to get a goat and a lamb. You're going to have a big, family festival deal. And at twilight, everybody's watching for the sun. At twilight, everybody slaughters the lamb or the goat. And the people of Israel are going, is this the same God that blotted out the sun and the Nile River? I mean, God, we're going to have a meal? I mean, he finally decided to talk to us. And by the way, slaughtering lambs and goats, that was like talking on a cell phone for them. They did it all the time. For us, it's like gross and a big deal. This was just, a way of life, so it wasn't that unusual. Check this out, verse 7. Verse 7. This is when it got unusual. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and the tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. Do what? Yes, God has issued a thou shalt. Thou shalt take the blood of the lamb or the goats, and you're to put it on the top of your doors and on the side of your doors. That's really odd. I mean, that's what he wants us to do. That's what God has commanded you to do. In verse 12, skip on down. On that same night, I will pass through Egypt, and I'm going to strike down every firstborn, both men and animals. And I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, and if you wonder why Jewish people call it Passover, here it is. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt, verse 14. This is a day you're to commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. Now, here's what God was saying to the nation, and this is so important for you and for me. He's saying, look, let me tell you what I want to be for you. Not your lawgiver. I want to be your Savior. I want to be your rescuer. I want to come right down the midst of the point of your greatest need, and I want to be your deliverer. And all I need you to do is trust me. Because I know it doesn't make a bit of sense. I mean, slaughtering lambs and sheep and goats and eating, you do that all the time. But taking that blood and putting it over on beside your door, that's going to feel so strange. It's not going to make any sense. You only have to do it one time. You don't have to do this for the rest of your life. Don't ever forget it, but you only have to do it once. I just want you to do this unusual thing as evidence of your confidence and your trust in me. I want to be your God. I want you to trust me. And standing there at the foot of Mount Sinai with that memory just 3 months old. And standing at the top of Mount Sinai about to receive God's commandment with that memory just 3 months old. Here's what the nation of Israel knew, and here's what Moses knew. we're not here to get in with God. We're here because we're already in. We're not here to establish a relationship. Good grief, we've got one. We're not here to find out, is he going to be our God? Clearly he is. He delivered us from our captors and we hadn't done a thing. We didn't even know what we were supposed to do. We didn't even know the rules. We didn't even know his name. We knew nothing. We had done nothing. And he just decided, for some reason we don't completely understand, to reach down and deliver us from our captors and to bring us to this mountain. And having established the fact that we are his and he is ours, now he is about to give us the law we are to live by. You see, right there, in the midst of the giving and the receiving of the Ten Commandments, is the greatest story and the greatest message you will ever hear as a human being. That a relationship with God is not predicated on keeping rules. He established a relationship with people before they even knew what the rules were. That a relationship with God isn't built around rule keeping and law keeping, because he illustrated for the whole world, I have chosen for myself a people, not because of what they have done or how they performed, but simply because they trusted me. They did one unusual, unique thing that I just decided I wanted them to do as evidence of their trust in me. I said, I just want you to take the blood of a lamb or a goat and put it on your door as evidence that your confidence is in me. And that's all it took to initiate and establish that relationship of trust. And now that I've delivered you, now that we're in, now that the relationship has been sealed, now I'm going to give you the law I want you to live by. Whew. That's the message of the Ten Commandments. That's the message of the Old Testament. That's the message of the New Testament.